Hey guys, it's Mario here back with another quick video, and in this one I decided to share with you guys a couple of ideas on how to master your emotions. And you might be wondering, well, why is this guy talking about this? Isn't this guy supposed to be talking about bodybuilding, about the gym, about lifting heavy weights, counting your macros, getting shredded and these things? And that's true. I mean, that's a big part of the journey, is really mastering your nutrition, mastering your weight training, progressing in the gym, getting stronger. I mean, those are huge in the journey. But a big part of this are your emotions. A big part of this is your emotional state on a day-to-day basis, especially in those situations when you're dieting down, where you kind of tend to lose objectivity. And for that reason, it's important for us to be able to kind of master that emotional state, master those emotions, especially if you're someone who's just starting out, who hasn't been very consistent with gym, with basically a lifestyle change. Because what we need to do is change our lifestyle. Otherwise, all of this stuff that we're doing isn't gonna work. And this takes sustained effort, takes long-term effort in order for us to get really great results. And if you look at all the people who look fairly impressive, it's years and years of training usually. I mean, at least about 4 or 5 years of training before you can really say, hey, that guy or that girl looks amazing. So when we compare the emotional side of things and the rational side of things, the emotional side of things is much, much bigger in the scope of things, how it influences our decisions. And this is well documented even in research. If you read books like The Happiness Hypothesis, which is one of my top 5 books by Jonathan Haidt, I would highly recommend you check out that book. He actually compares the emotional side of ourselves with an elephant. Like, that's a huge, huge elephant that we're dealing with. And that's a part of us. And he says the rational side of things, our prefrontal cortex, our decision making, our willpower portion of ourselves, it is a rider. It's a small rider on top of that elephant. And that rider, sometimes, it can direct the elephant in a good direction. But if it's a matter of who's going to get the ice cream, or if there's any conflict, that elephant is going to go for it, and you can't do anything for it. If there's a conflict, we know, I mean, elephant is a huge animal, and the elephant will win. And a good kind of example what happens in real life, let's say you come back from work, you did some decent work, and you're tired, and you're just exhausted, and even though you're on a diet, your elephant will be like, well, let me just get that ice cream anyway, because it's gonna make me feel better. And then you're going to get that ice cream, and what the rational side of you is going to do is going to self-rationalize that. That's called self-rationalizations. And we often have these things happen to us, especially when we're dieting down, when we're trying to change behavior. Often we'll find ourselves that our elephant takes control. It just goes into a random impulse kind of action, and then the rational side of things tries to cope with that, and it's usually coming up with reasons why it happened. And I'm not saying here that the elephant is bad. Elephant is actually a big source of motivation. It's a source of your why. It's a source of emotions. Emotions are extremely powerful. We're emotional creatures. And the way we want to look at it is like, well, how can we master those emotions when it comes to changing our behavior and when it comes to building new habits and these things? And that's something I wanted to share with you guys in this video, is 3 steps, 3 ways how you can master your emotional state, how you can influence those emotions and kind of take control of that elephant and move the elephant in the right direction. So the first thing I'd say is that it's important to understand that the elephant responds to positive emotions. Like your state, your primal side of yourself responds to positive emotions. And often when we start exercising, when we start doing these things, we're too analytical, we're too logical. We're like, well, analyze the thing. Is it working? Do we need to add a little bit more carbs, reduce a little bit more fat, had extra day in the gym? And we try to analyze, we try to do the cost benefit analysis and do all these things, but we're forgetting the enjoyment. Like, why are we doing this in the first place? Are we doing this because just to, I don't know, just to do it, or are we actually finding enjoyment in it? And it's important to understand that to get good results in here, we do need that sustained effort, and that sustained effort will not happen unless you're really enjoying what you're doing. And think about it for a second. There's only so much you can do before you give up if that's something you really hate to do. And most people, the way they associate managing their nutrition or going to the gym is that, well, it's just some tool, it's just something that I have to do until I get to my goal, and then I'm going to be happy. And with that kind of mindset, you're not self-aware, you're not aware of all the positive stuff that is happening when you're exercising, how it makes you feel, how good you feel, and you don't really pay attention to these things. And that's something I'm also guilty of as well, because I'm very analytical, I'm very logical, rational, and I'm like, okay, did I hit a PR? Are the numbers going up? Did I hit my macros and all these things? But I often forget to go back and see, okay, how do I feel? How do I feel after an exercise? Do I feel good? Well, yeah. And then I need to kind of let that sink in a little bit. Same if I eat a good healthy meal. How do I feel? Does it make me feel better? Well, yeah, in most cases it makes me feel better. If I get a good night of sleep, does that make me feel better or worse? Well, it makes me feel better. And these are some of the things that we have to, I guess, connect with again, because we often forget it. In the day-to-day rush, with all this information, with all this overload, we tend to forget why we're doing these things. Like, what is happening to us? Are we enjoying it, or are we just simply doing it? Are we just simply going through the motion? And we know that if we're just going through the motion, we're going to eventually fail. And because we fail, because our emotional side of things will just work against us. It's not, well, it's not enjoying it. It's basically working like this big portion of yourself is working against a tiny little portion, which is willpower. And guess who's going to win? Always the emotional side of you is going to win. And that's why people give up in the gym. They start going and they make a plan. It's like, okay, this many reps, sets, these exercises, this many times a week. And then the time comes to go to the gym. It's like, well, why don't I just watch another episode of that TV series that just came out? Because I watched the episode one, was really good, it was really funny, and it was really inspiring. So why don't I just watch the episode two? Why don't I just browse a little bit of Reddit after that, or just check my Facebook, my Instagram, and a couple hours later, you missed the workout. And your rational brain knows, hey, I should have went to the gym. I should have done that workout. It would be the better choice. But again, there's nothing you can do about it. Your emotions took control. In that moment, those emotions were controlling you. You didn't control them. So it's important to understand that, well, if I go to the gym, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel much, much better than if I just watch a TV series. I'm going to not only feel better in the moment, I'm also going to feel better later on, because I'm not going to have any regret, and I'm going to know that I did the best I can. And that feeling that, well, you did the best you can in that moment is really, really important. And that is connecting to your why. That will be the step number one when it comes to mastering emotions. The step number two is a really, really important one, is that your emotional side of your brain really operates on a fear basis. We're fear-based creatures. As much as we go like against pain and we go through pleasure and all these things, but we're really fear-based creatures, and that's our evolution. We've evolved to be in fear. And the second step is a really important one, and let me just put this in context of my current situation. If I think that about every single thing that I need to do on my diet for the next 4 to 5 months, if I have a goal here, I want to lean down, I want to get to a certain body fat percentage, and if I think about every little single thing that I need to do, I'm going to start being a little bit afraid. Okay, shit, do I need to do all of that? That's such a vague kind of goal. And what's going to happen is I'm going to be a little bit afraid, and there's not going to be any small wins along the way, so I'm most likely going to fail. The way you want to set up your goals and the way you want to kind of use your emotional state is create as many small wins as possible. So you want to baby step that goal into as tiny goals as possible so you can win on a very frequent basis. You should be winning every single day. You should be analyzing, hey, I hit my macros today. Awesome, it's a small win. Celebrate that. And people aren't celebrating wins often enough. People are just like waiting for the big thing. They're waiting for that one single event before they start celebrating. And that's a big mistake, because along the way, the emotional side of things, your emotions will just go wild because you're not giving them that positive feedback. And without that positive feedback, you can't really direct an elephant, right? An animal, if you're not giving it positive reinforcement continually throughout the journey. And that's where a lot of people fail. They really try to go through it, willpower, consistency of rational thinking, logically, I know what steps I need to take, but then again, if you're not baby stepping it, when you fail, the elephant is just, oh, fuck that, just run away, because it's just overwhelmed, because it doesn't know what's happening. And a big part of this, as I said, is really shrinking that change into as small as bit as possible to really get that positive feedback as frequently as possible. And the number three, a very, very important thing when it comes to changing, your behavior, is really adopting that growth mindset. And why am I saying this? Well, your emotions, they hate to fail. Your emotional system, your emotions go wild when you fail. They hate failure. They would rather not do anything. That's why most people don't do anything, because they're just simply afraid of failing. And the way you can do this, the way you can kind of combat that and master your emotions in the process, is you can create expectations of failure. Because nobody ever became a good athlete without failure. Nobody ever made it to the world elite violinist without failing. Nobody ever became a master pianist without failing, or an artist, or a scientist, or anything, or an inventor. Nobody ever became any meaningful thing without failure. So why just not accept and embrace that and expect that? So that is called having a growth mindset. You expect the failure, and oh yeah, failure, time to learn something. And then in that mindset, your emotions will be more controlled, because you're giving them that expectation. And it's not just that all of a sudden you failed. And I'm not saying that I'm saying, not saying that the whole thing is a failure. I'm saying that you want to say, hey, there's going to be steps where I'm going to be failing. There's going to be steps along the way, along the journey, where I'm going to fail. It's not that the complete journey is a failure. It's not that I'm a failure as a person, that I need to go through some crazy process, but it's really about that some of those steps will fail. And that's important to understand. And they will fail regardless of how good you are, because you're human. You're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. That's a really, really important thing to understand when it comes to controlling your emotions and really mastering them, is to embracing the fact that there will be failure, but that they also contain massive lessons which will allow you to fail less in the future. Right? So failure is only a failure if it happened like 2 or 3 times on the same thing. Otherwise, it's just a lesson. If you failed one, if you learned, after that, it's not really a failure. It's actually a learning experience. But that's what you need to convey to your emotional side of things. So they're like, okay, yeah, I'm learning, I'm improving, I'm bettering myself. And that's really what it comes down to. So to summarize a little bit here, to give you guys that matrix, and this is very relevant if you read the book Switch, which I highly, highly recommend, in a book Made to Stick from Dan Heath and Chip Heath. Amazing guys. They talk about this more in depth. And to summarize the steps, basically the number one is remember your why. Remember the positive emotions you feel like when you're executing those positive habits, when you're executing those healthy habits, going to the gym, eating the right foods, hitting your macros on a daily basis. Remember how that makes you feel, and create a system that really makes you feel good, that makes you want to do it. And don't get stuck in that mindset that it's like, well, it's all of this because I have to go through it, I have to go through all this pain to reach a goal, because that's really, really unsustainable, and eventually you're going to fight your emotions and your emotions are going to win. The second thing, baby step the goal. Baby step the goal, because not only you're going to get more small wins, but you're going to be able to create momentum. And what momentum does is, when you're solving small problems along the way, when a big one comes up, you're like, well, I have all the momentum, so you're more likely to tackle the big problem and not give up. And even if you do fail, you're like, well, I had so many wins. If I failed once, it doesn't really matter. I can just keep doing it. And you want to feed your emotional side of things, your emotions, with as much positive feedback as possible. So just feed it with positivity, and they will, your emotional side of things will be on your side, which is super, super important. And the number three is really, really working on that growth mindset, to expect and to train yourself to expect failure, to expect that you're going to fail along the way on certain steps, that you can't be perfect, and that you're going to eventually reach the goal if you just simply persistent, and if you keep learning and improving, that there's no way you're not going to reach that goal, and there's really no way you're not going to get there if you have that persistence and that growth mindset. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Real quick video here on how to actually master your emotions. These are 3 things that are tremendously helped me along the way, and I think that every single habit, a new habit that I try to implement in my life, this is the matrix that I really approach it through, and then I try to break it down and apply these principles, and it really, really works. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below if you resonate with this, if you're gonna apply this, if you find this helpful. So shoot me a comment below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.